So, fellas, it's been quite a weird day in combat sports. From Eddie Hall knocking out a 50-year-old man, to Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. being a massive fight, to Ian Garry winning a decision over Carlos Prates, where Prates fumbled the finish. We're going to be going over UFC Kansas City, the full card. I thought it was a decent fight. Now, there were a couple of stingy performances on there. There were a couple of really good knockouts as well, but we'll go for each fight. Starting off with Chandler versus Joselyn Edwards. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really see the full fight because I was watching the Eubank versus Conor Benn fight, but from what I did see, Joselyn Edwards did get the KO in the first round against Chandler. My main takeaway from this fight is that, yeah, Joselyn Edwards is legit in this division. I think she definitely deserves a ranked name next. I know she was on a bit of a losing streak, but in her last two fights, she's picked up 2 finishes, and she's a dangerous striker, you know. She's got pop in her shots, her takedown defense and her grappling seem to be improving. Even in that fight with Eileen Perez, she had decent grappling too, so cut Chandler. She can't make weight. She misses weight nearly every single time. She's just been finished by Joselyn Edwards. She's on like a 3-fight losing streak, and I think she got the record of like 6-5, so she can be cut from the UFC. But yeah, Edwards is legit. 2 finishes in a row, looked amazing in the last 2 fights. I know she hasn't been beating the highest level fighters, but in women MMA, if you're going out there and finishing people on a consecutive basis, then it shows that you're at least UFC worthy. So great finish by Joselyn Edwards. Give her somebody in the top 15, maybe the top 10, because even that fight with Eileen Perez was competitive, and now Eileen Perez is on an absolute tear. So good win from Joselyn Edwards to start off the card. And is it just me? I know I said this a few weeks ago, but women MMA is kind of turning up. I know we've had a couple of bad women MMA fights recently, but this fight wasn't even that bad, and we've had a couple of good women MMA performances recently, so good win for Joselyn Edwards is what it is. Next fight we had was Timmy Cuamba versus Roberto Romero. Yeah, this fight was, I'd say, going in the favour of Roberto Romero until the second round, when Timmy Cuamba was just on point, landed a knee, a head kick, and a right hand in the same like 30 seconds, and then eventually dropped Roberto Romero, where the referee stopped the fight. I can kind of understand the stoppage, but I also thought it was a bit of an early stoppage. Roberto Romero immediately protested. He looked like he was ready to fight. I know he got damaged like 3 times in the same 30 seconds, but yeah, Cuamba looked slick with the striking. He had a bit of a dodgy first round, couldn't take down Roberto Romero. It seemed like Romero was doing the better out of the two of them, and then yeah, Timmy Cuamba lands a massive right hand, wobbles Romero, lands a massive head kick, wobbles Romero, doesn't drop him, and then gets him against the cage, lands a massive knee, drops Roberto Romero, and then the referee stops the fight, resulting in it what I thought was a bit of an early stoppage, but I'm not going to protest over it. Shame from Romero though, because the guy's 0-2 in the UFC now, and his first fight was against David Onama, who just won later on in this card, and he actually had a really good performance against Onama, and in this fight it seemed like he was winning, and you can say that there was an early stoppage, so he's probably going to end up getting cut from the UFC because he's 0-2, but I think he's going to dominate the regional scene. I think he proved that he's UFC worthy. He's just had a very unlucky run in the UFC so far. I reckon 2-3 more fights on the regional scene, then bring him back over to the UFC, maybe have him on the Contender Series. So I still think he's UFC worthy. It is a bit of a, it is a bit of a shame for him. But good win for Timmy Cuamba, massively improved. I thought if he was going to lose this fight, he would have been cut from the UFC, but he had a really good performance. His striking looked very slick. He had really good kicks. That spinning back kick to the body that he landed on Romero in the second round was slick. And yeah, once he got going, once he got in the floor state, he looked really good. So solid win for Timmy Cuamba. Finished Roberto Romero in that fashion, and looked good doing it. Then we had Jacqueline Amorim versus Polyana Viana. Yeah, this was quite a good fight to watch. Jacqueline Amorim submits Polyana Viana in the second round. It was a bit of a dodgy fight with, well, not a dodgy fight, but there was back and forth with grappling positions. They both kind of had the upper hand until eventually, like halfway through the first round, it was just domination from Amorim. She was, she had a dominant position on Polyana Viana for the whole fight, and then in the second round, inevitably, she took her down immediately and found the submission. Women's strawweight division, you have a Khamzat Chimaev in Jacqueline Amorim. Amorim has phenomenal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you don't know, before the UFC or even before her MMA career, she comes from like a big Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, and she's shown it so far in the UFC. She's on a 4-fight winning streak with just straight finishes, which, like I said before, in women MMA is massively impressive. And I believe she's not even ranked as well. To be on a 4-fight finishing streak and not even be ranked is crazy. She better be in the top 10 somewhere. She definitely will have to beat in Polyana Viana. Big prospect at 115 pounds. There are some dangerous fighters in her division, like Jillian Robertson's another really good grappler, and the strawweight division is probably the most competitive division when it comes to women MMA. But Jacqueline Amorim is definitely somebody to look out for. Dominated Polyana Viana the whole fight, gave her somebody in the top 10, and it wasn't even a close fight. And Polyana is not that bad of a grappler. I know she tends to struggle against other grapplers, like when she faced Tabitha Ricci and when she faced Lucindo, but she's not that bad of a fighter. So for Amorim to take her down and control her in both rounds and then eventually get the submission, and she's actually an active grappler too. She's not just looking to take you down and keep you down like a Amanda Lemos. She actually looks to deal damage with ground and pound and get the submission. Dominated her, found the submission. Really good win for Amorim, and is someone that I'm going to be looking forward to at 115 pounds, because we need to stop praising these type of fighters in women MMA, fighters who actually go for the kill. But anyway, I'm yapping too much. Good win for Jacqueline. Amorim submits Polyana Viana, and yeah, Polyana Viana, I think there's like a 3-fight losing streak now. She needs to pull her socks up. Then we had Saaiman versus Malcolm Wellmaker. Potential for KO of the year, and maybe I'm saying this too early, but that was an amazing knockout from Malcolm Wellmaker. Just sleeps Saaiman in the very first round. Saaiman lunges in, cracks him with a massive right hand, and it was like watching that Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez KO, where he sent him like halfway across the octagon with just one shot. Sleeps Saaiman, and probably beats Saaiman better than anybody has before. I know Talbot broke him down, but for Malcolm Wellmaker to just make his UFC debut and do that to Saaiman, massively impressive. We're in the Cameron Wellmaker season, baby. But no, great win for Malcolm Wellmaker. Sleeps Saaiman like he's a cannon. Listen, I know Saaiman was kind of overhyped, you know, trains at the same gym as Dricus du Plessis. He's going to go forwards, once an undefeated dude or whatever, but he's now on a 3-fight losing streak, but he's not a can, you know, he's still got somewhat skill. So for Malcolm Wellmaker to perform like that against Saaiman, and he has this big track record of knockouts before, and his record is massively impressive, this kid's going to be a big prospect at 135. He's got personality, he's got hype, he's got finishing ability, he's undefeated. Malcolm Wellmaker's a prospect in the making at 135, and it is a bit of a tough spot for Saaiman now, because I don't know if the UFC are going to cut him, because obviously he's got ties with Dricus du Plessis, and he was once a prospect, and you know, he's got at least a little bit of a fan base from the Dricus fan base, but you're on a 3-fight losing streak in the UFC, and you're not exactly a high-level fighter. He could be cut from the organization, which I don't mind. Getting back to the regional scene, getting some momentum, getting some more experience before it comes back to the UFC. But either way, that was about Malcolm Wellmaker. Just sent Saaiman flying across halfway through the octagon. Really good knockout from Malcolm Wellmaker. Said he wants to be on the UFC Atlanta card in May. Get him on the card. Whatever he asks for, give him it. Hope he got a 50k bonus as well for that knockout. Couldn't have asked for a better debut, especially to do that to Saaiman. So, really good knockout from Malcolm Wellmaker. KO of the fucking year contender. And then we had Damon Blackshear versus Alatengheili. Now, this was where the card kind of started to slow down in momentum. It wasn't necessarily a bad fight, but Damon Blackshear gets a decision win just by essentially just spamming kicks. Spams kicks to Alatengheili in the first round. Actually looked really good with his strike, and then after the first round, he kind of slowed down, and we started to see Alatengheili come with like a pressure boxing approach. Still lost the fight because he was massively outnumbered when it came to the significant strikes landed, but we're starting to put the pressure on Damon Blackshear, just wasn't really able to land. But yeah, Blackshear outlands Heili with the kicks at range, whilst Whaley, I just called him Whaley, that's not racist, I swear, guys. Heili finds success in the pocket. But yeah, you know what I will say about Damon Blackshear, even though, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was a close fight, and I thought he was going to perform better against Alatengheili, at least he's showing his striking base, because we know this dude is a killer grappler. Damon Blackshear is an amazing grappler, so I'm surprised that we didn't really see any grappling in this fight, but the fact that he actually showed us the stand-up across 3 rounds against Alatengheili and didn't look that bad doing it, it gives me a bit of hope for Damon Blackshear, because in the future, as he starts getting into the rankings and stuff, the fact that he's got the grappling and the strike and he's not just one-dimensional is what you want to see from Damon Blackshear. There was a couple of times where he attempted a takedown, but he couldn't really get going with it, so it was a striking matchup. He attacked him with kicks at range. Every now and then, Alatengheili would come in the boxing, in the pocket, and just start ripping to the body with the combinations. And then in the third round especially, he was just swinging for the fences, trying to land on Damon Blackshear. But good win for Damon Blackshear. I did expect a little bit more, but it is what it is. Got the win. 3-fight winning streak, 2 finishes on there. Probably about a fight away from getting somebody in the top 15. So, good win for Damon Blackshear. And for Alatengheili, didn't perform too bad to say that he's had, what, 2 years off, but good win for Damon Blackshear, showcasing the striking. And then we had Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. Yeah, this was always going to be a Chris Gutierrez decision. If you put John Castaneda and Chris Gutierrez against each other, there's no chance in hell it's coming out with a finish. It was just a bit of an uneventful fight, to be fair. Chris Gutierrez, as he always does, managing the range and spamming leg kicks. I will say this about Chris Gutierrez. He is a good leg kicker. He has got really good kicks for the bantamweight division, but it was kind of just a lot of feeling out. Chris Gutierrez landing the kicks. There were a couple of times when John Castaneda took down Gutierrez, but apart from that, it was essentially just leg kick mania. That's all it really was in this fight. There's not really much else to break down. Gutierrez is such a high output fighter. Like, I'll give him that. I think he's actually got the second most significant strikes landed in bantamweight history, just behind Sean O'Malley, which is an insane statistic to have. But he's literally made in a lab for decisions. Chris Gutierrez is like you've made a human being in a lab or a fighter in a lab to specifically not get finishes, doesn't chase submissions, hasn't got KO power, doesn't really land with much pop in his hands. He kind of just tags people with kicks. And then even when he wobbles people, he doesn't go for the kill. So he's a good fighter, you know. He's borderline top 15, but he just hasn't got finishing ability to save his life. It was just a meh fight. It was a technical fight, technical striking matchup between the two of them. They were fairly even as well, but it just wasn't that overly fun of a fight. Good win for Chris Gutierrez. Probably another fight away from getting a chance at the top 15, but yeah, wasn't overly fun, just kind of kicking mania. And then it was kind of similar to the Gage Young versus Evan Elder, where Evan Elder wins a decision. Again, there wasn't really much to break down about this fight. Evan Elder, every now and then, will kind of blitz in with a boxing combination and land on Gage Young. Gage Young was pressuring him too, trying to get the KO win, but couldn't really happen. It wasn't that bad of a fight. It was better than the previous fight, but yeah, it was just another heavy kicking match. Evan Elder kicking to the body at range, every now and then blitzing him against Gage Young, and then Gage Young would just pressure Evan Elder against the cage and miss, and that's really what it was. But Gage did have good boxing and range control, I'll give him that. I think his boxing was better in this fight, but he was outmatched with output and pop in his shots. Evan Elder definitely had more pop in his shots. He was definitely landing more shots, so good win for Evan Elder. Again, there's not really much to break down for this fight. There's nothing significant that happened. I'm going to swiftly move on and forget that this ever happened. On to match Schnell versus Jimmy Flick, where the fight kind of started to pick up, the card started to kind of pick up again, which I never expected from two kind of borderline retired flyweights, but that was the case. This was just constant grappling reversals the entire fight. 1 second you've got Matt Schnell getting with Jimmy Flick in a guillotine, and then the next second you've got Jimmy Flick unloading on Matt Schnell. But it was a grappling heavy fight where Matt Schnell was able to get the win, and he's back in the winning column in the UFC. It was really back and forth. There was at least 5 different times when I thought a submission was locked in, like Matt Schnell would have like Jimmy Flick in a guillotine, and I'm like, okay, the fight's done, he's got him done. And then a minute later, you've got Jimmy Flick with like a Matt Schnell in a rear naked choke, and it's just constant grappling reversals. But it was a fun fight, and it was a great win for Matt Schnell. You know, he much needed this one after nearly retiring. He retired kind of partially from the sport, comes back against Jimmy Flick, gets the win. It was a fun fight too, just like his fight with Sumadaji. So, listen, Matt Schnell's never going to be in the top 15 again, in my opinion. He might be able to break the top 15, but I don't think he's ever going to be in the top 10. He's just a bit too vulnerable, in my opinion, both with his grappling and obviously with his chin. But he is quite a fun fighter. He goes out there and puts on fun fights nearly every time, and he just had a good performance against Jimmy Flick, and that's probably going to be it for Jimmy Flick. He's getting up there in age in the flyweight division. He was kind of contemplating retirement, and now that he's lost to Matt Schnell, that's probably going to be it for Jimmy Flick. I don't really have any interest in seeing him fight again, and if not, he's probably going to be cut from the organization. But I thought it was a good fight. Grappling reversals all over the place where Matt Schnell did the better, and yeah, was able to beat Jimmy Flick. Fair play for Jimmy Flick as well to not getting submitted multiple times where I thought he was going to get done. And then we had Ikram Aliskerov return to the UFC after his fight night main event against Robert Whittaker, against Andre Muniz, and he got the TKO in the very first round. Yeah, this fight was essentially just Ikram Aliskerov backing Andre Muniz against the cage, and then eventually landed a shot, and it wasn't like a flush shot, but he wobbled Andre Muniz and just went for the ground and pound kill, and was able to finish Andre Muniz and get back in the finishing column, and he's now obviously just finished Andre Muniz. Yeah, this was a bit of a weird stoppage. Ikram Aliskerov barely lands on Andre Muniz. It didn't seem like he landed on anything flush. I didn't really see the replay. I think it was an uppercut coming in. He barely landed on Muniz, but he wobbled him against the cage, and then with just one more shot, dropped him and went through a ground and pound finish, and obviously got the finish. Ikram's super dangerous in the middleweight division. Even before his Whittaker fight, I was saying that this guy's going to be the next big thing in the middleweight division, and even after his Whittaker fight, I still have a lot of hype in Ikram Aliskerov. Very well-rounded, you know, dangerous everywhere the fight goes. His only losses are to Chimaev and Whittaker, and he's just gone out there and brutalized Andre Muniz in the first round. He does seem a little bit slow for the middleweight division. Like when he was backing Andre Muniz against the cage, his 1-2s were quite slow, and he kind of telegraphs his body kicks a lot. So I can see that becoming a problem as he starts facing these better strikers. But he's dangerous everywhere the fight goes. Big for the division too, so bulky for the division. But it was a great finish from Ikram Aliskerov, back in the winning column. Said he wants to fight in either summer or winter. I say we give him maybe one more fight before the top 15, and then we give him another opportunity, because I think this guy's really got potential in the middleweight division. That loss to Whittaker was obviously tough, but it's Whittaker at the end of the day, and it was on short notice. So good win for Ikram Aliskerov, back in the winning column, dropped and finished Andre Muniz, and obviously got back in the winning column. And then we had Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. Now I know I said before with Malcolm Wellmaker and Cameron Saaiman that could have been KO of the year. This could have also been a contender for KO of the year, where Randy Brown brutally knocks out Nicholas Dalby. Just the entire fight was a brutal domination from Randy Brown. He was just completely picking apart Nicholas Dalby the entire fight. Snapped his nose, I think it was in the first round, and then popped his eye open as well. Maybe that was because Nicholas Dalby maybe tried breathing too hard in his nose and then his eye pulled out, but either way, it was a dominant performance from Randy Brown until eventually he flatlines Nicholas Dalby. I thought I was watching Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje 2 all over again, the way that he slept Nicholas Dalby. That is exactly what Randy Brown needed. KO of the year contender. They were both just swinging back and forth, and then Randy Brown just chins Nicholas Dalby. First guy to ever finish Nicholas Dalby as well, which if you know Nicholas Dalby, this dude's a gritty veteran. That's a tough thing to do, but yeah, Randy just beat the absolute crap out of him, broke his face, dominated him. But I will give credit to Nicholas Dalby. He was able to drop Randy Brown in the first round as well and get dominant position, and then that second round he kind of just said fuck it and started swinging for the fences in hopes that he can land on Randy Brown, which obviously he didn't. But yeah, it was a great fight, an amazing finish for Randy Brown. To do that to Nicholas Dalby, you've got to give him someone in the top 15 now. I mean, he's on like, what, he's won 4 of his last 5 fights, I'm pretty sure, and that one loss was a very, very controversial loss to Brian Battle, where I thought he won that fight too. So I think you give Randy Brown someone in the top 15, maybe, hey, I'm just saying, Carlos Prates could be a good opponent for Randy Brown on like a pay-per-view main card, but good performance from Randy Brown, dominated Nicholas Dalby, and he's always kind of had the reputation for being the best dude that's unranked at 170, and I think after that performance against Nicholas Dalby, he only cemented that claim anymore. He's just not good enough yet to make it into the top 15, but he's definitely the best guy, unranked at 170, long, rangy striker who's got pop in his hands and take down defense. He's going to go far, and with that performance over Nicholas Dalby, hopefully, definitely, without a doubt, gets a 50k bonus. So, great win for Nicholas Dalby, great win for Randy Brown, sleeps Nicholas Dalby and gets back in the winning column. Then we had Michel Pereira versus Abbas Magomedov. Yeah, the card started to die down a bit as well with this, where Abbas Magomedov gets the decision win over Michel Pereira. There isn't really much to break down. It seemed like they were both having a sparring match, like, you know, in the gym where you switch training partners and you've got to go light on them for about 2 minutes. This is what this fight seemed like. It was kind of like I was waiting for something to happen, then it never happened. It was just a bit of a meh performance where Abbas Magomedov was leading the dance and controlling Michel Pereira. Can I just say, what the fuck has happened to Michel Pereira? This guy went from being a chaotic, charismatic, maybe not charismatic, but you know, a chaotic and explosive dude who used to backflip over people, go out there and swing for the fences in the first round, KO these cans and backflip over their corpses. And now he's just kind of, he walked out there and it wasn't even like he was good for the first minute and then he gassed out. He didn't do anything in this fight. He looked stuck in this fight. There was nothing from Michel Pereira. There was no going for the kill. There was no blitz. There was no urgency. There was no backflip that we normally see. He kind of just seemed like a fish out of water in this fight. Maybe he's been traumatized since that fight with Anthony Hernandez. From my perspective, it looked like they were both just trying to conserve their stamina. Obviously, neither of these guys really have a good reputation for having a good gas tank, but the fight just, it kind of seemed that way. It seemed like they were both just very cautious of their gas tank. I thought that maybe Michel Pereira, and the commentary picked up this too, that maybe Michel Pereira was waiting for the third round until Abbas Magomedov had gassed out a bit and then he could go for the kill, but there was just nothing from Michel Pereira. I missed the Michel Pereira from 2022. I missed the can crusher Michel Pereira compared to whatever this was, but good win for Abbas Magomedov on a bit of a winning streak now, beats Michel Pereira, doesn't really do anything dominant with it, takes him down a few times and outlands him on the feet, but is what it is for Abbas Magomedov. Beats Michel Pereira, probably going to get a shot at the top 15 as well next, so good for him. But yeah, Michel Pereira, we need to give this dude another can so we can get another highlight reel. But yeah, kind of a fraud, I guess. A fraud is Michel Pereira. We thought this guy was going to be the next big thing. I can't believe I picked him to beat Anthony Hernandez as well in that fight like 7 months ago. I can't believe I ever did that after this performance. Good win for Magomedov, but it was a boring fight. And then we had another kind of uneventful fight where Giga Chikadze loses to David Onama. Good win for David Onama, I'll give him that. Now, Giga Chikadze was lighting David Onama up on the feet. He was definitely superior striker, which is what I thought was going to win in the fight. But eventually, David Onama realizes he's got grappling, takes down Giga Chikadze, realizes that Giga Chikadze just refuses to improve in the UFC, and was able to ride out a decision win because of his grappling. Yeah, not the most eventful fight, but I'm not going to complain. Listen, it was a solid game from David Onama. He had 2 choices. Get lit up on the feet by a former glory kickboxer in Giga Chikadze, or be smart and take the fight to the ground and kind of stall. He chose the latter. He stalled. He got the win over Giga Chikadze, but he's now going to be in the top 15, and he just beat Giga Chikadze. So good win from David Onama. Decent personality, quite a likable dude. Actually, I don't know if he's a likable dude after that celebration he had after beating Gabriel Santos. But either way, good one for David Onama, well-rounded with good fight IQ. And Giga Chikadze, man, this guy's just disappointing to watch every single time. He literally never improved. Like, he went on that massive win streak in the UFC in his early career. And since then, I swear this guy hasn't improved at all. With his grappling, with his kickboxing, it's just the same Giga Chikadze every single fight. The dude just refuses to improve. He's letting down the Georgians. But good win for David Onama, took down Giga Chikadze, kept him down for 2 of the 3 rounds, and because of that, he was able to win the fight and is now going to be in the top 15, probably going to be fighting somebody in the top 10 next, and I've got a certain opponent which you're going to have to stay tuned for my matchmaking video tomorrow to see. Anyway, then we had Anthony Smith retire and get the biggest retirement ceremony I've ever seen after he gets TKO'd by Minyang Zhang in the very first round. Yeah, Minyang Zhang essentially just walks forward, slashes him with elbows on the feet, cuts Anthony Smith, and then Anthony Smith just flops to the floor. And then Minyang Zhang just goes for the kill and gets the finish in the first round. Kind of just, Anthony Smith didn't even put up a fight, really, let him get the finish. But yeah, Zhang just butchered Smith. That wasn't even a competitive fight. Just butchered him, pressured him, slashed him open with elbows, was making him bleed early on, and then just wobbled him and went for the kill for a ground and pound. He's a legitimate problem at light heavyweight, is Zhang Minyang. I'm sure you've all heard the record. He's got, like, well, every single one of his finishes in the very first round. He's on like a 13, 14 fight KO streak, every single one of them in the very first round. This dude kind of reminds me a bit of Sergey Pavlovich, where Pavlovich was just straight slaughtering people in the first round. That is kind of what Zhang Minyang reminded me of. He's a legitimate prospect in this division. I know we had the likes of Carlos Ulberg and Azamat Mirzakhanov, but they ain't sleeping dudes and butchering dudes in the same way that Zhang Minyang is. He goes out there and he brutalizes people, man. I want to see me getting somebody in the top 10 next, and after that, somebody in the top 5, because good prospect for 205, and I've never seen an Asian dude that big. It's a bit of a sad retirement for Anthony Smith to go out there and get butchered in that fashion, but it's much needed. He looks absolutely awful every single time he fights, and this was, again, he looked awful in this fight too, but listen, I'm not trying to complain about everything. I'm glad that Anthony Smith got a bit of a retirement ceremony, but I still can't get over the fact that Anthony Smith had all that, and then Stipe Miocic gets a 30-second octagon interview with Joe Rogan after he retires in a title fight against John Jones. I find that kind of ironic, but regardless, good win from Zhang Minyang, brutalizes Anthony Smith, and thank God we don't have to see Anthony Smith in the UFC anymore. Back to the analysis desk, so you can start breaking down fights on paper. And then we had Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. Ian Garry becomes the first man in the UFC to defeat a fighting nerd, ends the streak of the fighting nerds, and beats Carlos Prates. Stuck to the game plan, was just outlanding Carlos Prates on the feet, shot a couple of takedowns, missed most of them, but every time he did take down Carlos Prates, he was able to keep him down for at least a minute. But my main frustration in this fight is that 5th round. I'm so fucking pissed off with that 5th round. Carlos Prates could have finished him, man. He could have kept the fighting nerds lower up. He could have finished Ian Garry, and he could have been on a riding on a winning streak right now, and he decides to fumble the finish. That's so frustrating. So Carlos Prates wobbles Ian Garry, gets dominant position, starts battering him with ground and pound, and you could tell that Ian Garry was affected. I thought he was actually out cold at one point, and then Carlos Prates just flops on him, takes his back, doesn't even bother going for ground and pound, and then even worse, stands up and invites him when there's 16 seconds left. It was like Edwards versus Diaz 2, where Nate Diaz rocked Leon Edwards and didn't go for the kill. This is so frustrating to see, because if Carlos Prates had an ounce of fight IQ, which is ironic from a gym called the Fighting Nerds and you don't have any fight IQ, decides to not go for the kill against Ian Garry, I'm still so frustrated with this, and I'm probably going to be for a while, because he could have got the finish and could have been on a fucking winning streak. But it is what it is. Ian Garry gets to win. Good performance from Ian Garry, though. I said on there, good performance from Prates. I mean, good performance from Ian Garry. Just outclassed Prates everywhere the fight went. Was outlanding him, outstriking him. Was doing better in the grappling exchanges. Nothing over the top with Ian Garry, but you never really get anything over the top with Ian Garry. He talks the talk, and he walks a little bit of a walk, always going to a decision. Bit of a decision merchant in this division, but he's the first man to stop a fighting nerd. Fair play. Carlos Prates is definitely the weakest fighting nerd, though. And I know before it was kind of hard to tell because he was just going out there and straight sleeping dudes. But after this performance, I think he's the worst fighting nerd. And it's mainly his fight IQ that's the issue. Again, riding out the rounds early on and then not being able to get that finish in the 3rd round is so frustrating. But good one for Ian Garry. Probably about a fight away from a title fight, but he isn't going to shut the fuck up on social media about the fact that he deserves a title fight next. But good performance. Outclassed Carlos Prates. But those are my thoughts on UFC Kansas City. I thought it was a decent fight night card. Couple of stinky performances, couple of good performances, but let me know your thoughts on this card.